Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Feud podcast. And this is the huddle. And for this time, we're going to be talking redraft strategies. We've been talking a lot about Dynasty, but the season's coming around the corner. Let's go into redraft strategies. So, Anthony, redraft strategies for beginners. How should they start off? Like, if you're a first-time fantasy football person, maybe you're not familiar, you know the game of football, but it's your first time. How would you approach just or explain to somebody what their draft strategy should be in a redraft?
That's a good one because it's bold, right? Because everybody has their own, right? But first off, you want to make sure you're joining a league that is doing things that makes fantasy more competitive and fun, right? To me, it's just like I've been in a 10-man league and then everybody's team is just crazy, right? And those aren't fun. And they have a kicker. Like to me, guys, if you're starting up, don't join a league that has a defense or a kicker. There's no, just get it out of here. Defense, maybe I'll allow it, but like if you're in a league with a kicker, go home. Get it out. Get out of my face.
No fun.
You were we when I do any if I'm asked to join a redraft league because everybody does different scoring and payouts, and that's why I join different leagues and have as many as I do, minus the addiction. So it's one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, one tight end, two flexes. That is my standard. Like if you at least meet those standards, now I'm listening. So if you're in one of those leagues, strategy is you want to know. I always tell everybody like how you feel about a player this year is different than next year, obviously, right? Situations change. Do your rankings. And I told you that once when we were doing a prior episode, and I wasn't very like open about it. It's, I should have said, I guess, tiers, but go through quarterbacks are simple, tight ends are simple, right? Smaller category. Running backs and wide receivers especially. This is huge. So you rank them in tiers, your top tier running backs, wide receivers. So for instance, your top tier receivers, we're talking Jamar Chase, you're talking CeeDee Lamb, you're talking Puka Nacua, you're talking JSN, and Justin Jefferson. Maybe kind of stop it right there. And then your next tier, you got your Amon Ra. So then you start doing that. You start, where do you have your tiers? All right, this is the elite, the next, and you start breaking that down. So when you're drafting and you're at, obviously, first round's pretty standard when you're at and where you feel you're going to do, you're going to get some sort of player of value. It's when you start going into those two through five. Two through five are really set on your foundation and how you, so when you get to that second and third and fourth round pick and you're looking at running back or receiver and how you do your draft is based off of how everybody else is drafting. So you're looking at, all right, I got my third round pick here. I don't know if I want a running back or receiver, but you're looking at your tiers and you're like, I have an RB2 right here, a second tier running back still, and I have only my third tier down. So I'm just gonna grab this RB right here. I still got, or maybe you're in reverse where you're like, I'm gonna grab the wide receiver because I still think there's some value I could wait on running backs. So create your tiers. That's one I think standard every person should do. What about you, John? What's something that you just is like basic? I think this is something like I just said, something you should definitely do to start and then go from there. Because everybody's different, right?
Yeah,
Everybody has a different perspective.
I'm gonna agree with you. Is definitely go with the format with quarterback, two running back, three wide receivers, tight end, two flexes. Get that kicker out of there. I'm okay with a defense, but get the kicker out of there. Also think it's important to have tiers. But another important thing I think it's a lot more fun when you're in a league that's PPR, points per perception, points per reception. And I think it's so much more important. You get more points instead of your standard. It gets super frustrating when you got a guy that catches 10 balls and he doesn't score a touchdown or all these different things that happen. And I just like it because it's a passing league and you should be in a league that basically values how many times a guy gets the ball. So I think that's also important. Also, pay attention to scoring. That's another thing too. And also, is if your commissioner is a reputable guy, a guy that's fair, represents the league, is fair with people, and that would be my thing. Is also the commissioner. If the commissioner is fair, how long have you known this person? Is he a trustworthy person? Is he going to do the payouts? Is he going to do right by the league? I know that the commissioner is a part of the league, but the commissioner also needs to take himself out of there and make sure that he is doing in the benefit of all the people that are playing in the league. So my two things would be is definitely a PPR league and also making sure you have a good commissioner that is open to hearing other people that are playing and making sure that they're honoring the league. So those would be my two things that I
I
would
like
say.
that because I went more on a strategy base where you went more on like things to look out for, and doing fantasy for as long as I have and you have, one thing that I've had mixed reviews on and done different things with is a side of that where it comes to how the league is run, and that's trades, right? So some people, I'm in a league where people want to, bring back veto, or, you know, every trade just goes through. There's a fine line there. So to me, it's like I feel both sides. If I think that this trade's kind of like one-sided, I should be able to veto it. But that's not fair because one guy who's getting this guy where we think isn't good, he may think that something's coming up in the future, right? Oh, the end of the year, he's going to have a great year. There's different strategies for that. So that's where I'm like, all right, I can understand that. But you have to just make sure that everybody's going to try and keep it fair when it comes to trades too. So a lot of about joining a league is politics, as you would, which with is apparently everything in life. But if you have confidence in the group and you know everybody and you feel like that fine's cool, then that side is taken care of, and that's a huge part of it. And now it's into strategies. So here's I mean another strategy is how much, it's not even a strategy, it's what you got to do, man. How much you put into fantasy is how much you're going to get out of it. How
I
much
agree.
extra little information, right? Like it took me a couple years into playing to look at the future. And I'm not talking dynasty, I'm talking redraft, right? If we're in week 4 or 5 and I got one loss, I'm looking pretty good. I'm now looking at the back end of the season and what players do I feel like that aren't doing great right now, have a tough schedule right now and maybe an easy schedule at the back end of the year, or I just think they're going to blow up at the back end where you can buy low. I start to look at those teams, and obviously everybody after a couple weeks looks at the worst team and tries to buy their team for cheap or something, right? Buy their best player for a couple players, but it's those other little ones that not everybody does. Not everybody looks to see what three running backs, three receivers, and tight ends, or every player, honestly. But as for definitely running backs and wide receivers that are going to have a better back half of the year, that right, like
Yeah.
those little things, that's huge. What about you?
Yeah.
What are the some crazy little ticks, some things you do?
Yeah, so actually, let's go right into this upcoming year. So, I'm going to a little bit segue into the people that are a little more seasoned in fantasy football and what to look out for this upcoming 2026, 2027 football season. So, a very interesting thing and a little stat thing that I want to throw out there is we have as even in the first 10 to 12 picks an even amount of running backs and wide receivers that I've seen in recent years. Usually it's very wide receiver heavy. Your elite wide receivers are getting picked really early in those first 5 picks. But this year's just a slight different. I feel like now we're getting into a little bit more that running backs are starting to have a little bit more stronger of value, especially in redrafts. And I'm gonna give you some guys. I'm going to name you 5 guys just off the top of my head that will be drafted in the first 10 picks that are going to be running backs. That is Bijan and Jameer Gibbs, and they may be your 1, 2. Then I'm going to go down to Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, and CMC being drafted in the first 10 picks. So that is an equal amount of 5 running backs, 5 receivers in average And that is my prediction of how you should look into going into the season. That we have an even amount of running backs and wide receivers going into redrafts. So if you're going into redrafts right now, just pay attention, man, because it's becoming very equal, this running back wide receiver versus in past years, maybe you're looking at seven wide receivers being picked and maybe a little bit lower in the running backs. But I think it's just about like 50-50 with running backs and wide receivers. So that's some of my strategies going into the first round. So Anthony, what are your thoughts on that strategy
I
right there?
mean,
Just
I don't know if James Cook is going. I mean, maybe he does, but I was like, I don't see him in the first round. It's usually always slightly more receivers, and I agree. I think like if it was 7-5 or 7-4 and somebody grabbed a tight end in the first round, which has happened many years, um, that it could potentially be a 6-6. But I still think it's going to be a 7-5. And the question being, who are those five running backs? And yes, it's Bijan, it's Gibbs, it's is it CMC? Is he in there again for
I
redraft?
mean, he was great last year. We're going
Yeah,
based on last year's numbers. So running backs last year, a lot of these guys where, CMC had a down year in 2024 and going into 2025, I was one of those guys where I wasn't touching CMC the previous year when I drafted him. I was very butthurt by CMC and ended up having a great year. Another guy, Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he's just good
yeah,
every
him
single.
I can see, but see that when you hit Cook, I'm like I don't know, like because James
You
Cook
say
great.
that like Kenneth Walker would be higher than James Cook? I mean, James Cook
I'm
gets
see
work
I
in
could see
Buffalo.
I remember I could see somebody thinking Kenny Walker because of the Chiefs. What about Genty? What
What
about
about Echan?
what about Achan? What about Hampton?
Yeah, Omarion Hampton. Let's go into
I
Saquon
think I
Barkley.
think Hampton's a little reach on the first round, but Genty, I don't think so much. I'm like, I don't know.
Gentry's gonna get. I mean, what I'm saying is that I think that this going into 2026, and I think this is, I'm gonna go even to like second, third, and fourth round. Like, there's a lot of elite running backs going into there. Like, I think running back is one of those things where like you could get a really elite RB1 very comfortably, um, like in the first rounds. Like, and I think guys, if you're in a very, very competitive league where I'm expecting that we're going to be in a very competitive redraft and dynasty. That these guys, I mean, we've been playing with these guys for quite some time. I think that some guys are going to start catching on. Like, hey, I could get an RB1. This guy might be legitimately a league winner, and I think that you could get those with these running backs that are coming out in the first round. So depends on how you guys how you value it, but. I am starting to see trends in and redraft where running backs are getting picked a lot more earlier than I expected. I will say personally, my draft strategy is always going wide receiver heavy. I know Anthony is very big with wide receiver heavy early in the draft. I think that that should be a smart strategy for anybody that's going into a league of our format, especially when you have three wide receivers. You need to hit your first three picks with wide receivers, especially if you're not going to get a Bijan or a Jameer Gibbs in those first two picks, or if those two guys are off the board. You want to get those elite wide receivers without a doubt. So that was what I would say about that. I would say this, Anthony, a real interesting thing that we both are is we're not very high on tight ends. So, like, what round do you think that a guy that like a Trey McBride? What round should these guys go? A Brock Bowers, like what round should these guys be drafted in realistically? I know that a lot of these guys go maybe early in the second, maybe the end of the first
Yeah, I
round. So
figured Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are second rounders, third rounders, the latest. Somebody might try them in the back end of the first. I've seen it done numerous times. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily say that your first three picks have to be wide receivers, but I will say this. I can't tell you the last draft I've done, and I do minimal of five every year that I've ever drafted a running back in the first with my first pick. Like it's got to be a decade. Like you cannot go wrong. And now don't get me wrong, you want to have one of your running backs if you can to be a top 10 running back. That's awesome. but you don't necessarily happen to get those guys all the time because a lot of times a top 10 guy is a guy that's drafted as like the RB 20 to 30 sometimes, right? So you got to really hit on those. But for me, I'll look at it as this. If you have, if you're going to say my first five picks, because that is your, if you mess up on more than half of that, you're not looking pretty. If first five picks to me, it's going to be, I'm never going to have a quarterback really in there. Nine, not eight times out of 10, unless I'm looking in it's like the fourth round and like Joe Burrows for some reason, maybe he's still there, but like if I ended up having Jamar Chase and I got Joe Burrow on the 4-5 turn, I'm like, all right, to stack that, maybe I'll do that. But like eight times out of 10, five picks, I'm not drafting a quarterback or a tight end. I'm finishing my five picks with three wide receivers and two running backs, or four wide receivers and one running back. That is the only way the first five picks are happening for me eight times out of 10. So like, because to me, there's a year where you can go three wide receivers right in a row. I don't necessarily say do that every year. It's kind of how your draft goes, how that day goes. But if we're just trying to make it a little more general, after 5 rounds, in my opinion, Anthony's draft, Felly's jellies, three wide receivers, two running backs, four wide receivers, one running back. If you have started there, you're probably in pretty good shape. And now with your 6, 7, haha, as the kids say, you can now grab your second running back and then say, okay, I have a starting starting lineup for the most part. Now, do I want to grab my onesie? Do I want to grab a quarterback right here? Probably quarterback before tight end. Tight end, I push. I push. You can grab a guy, or you could stream throughout the season. Because a lot, how I feel now, I could be wrong, right? But a lot of more times than none, I feel the value you're going to spend on a top five tight end, I'm giving up value of a wide receiver right there. To where a lot of times, remember that one year, Sam Laporta, I drafted him in like the 13th round, and he was the last tight end. Everybody was like, "Oh, you're crazy," and he finishes the tight end one. That does not
Yeah.
happen all the time, but you can grab this quarterback position, and it's not going to be the elite, but you're going to get yourself within a 5 to 10 point range most weeks of the elite, but be in better shape because you have so much better receivers. That's just the way it's worked for me. I've done pretty well with it. That's just my way. What about
It's
you, John? If you had to say, all right, five after 5 rounds, most of the time, these are the positions I draft. So five positions for you. Eight, 9 times out of 10, you're walking out of there with what?
I would say I'm probably gonna draft in my league. This is exactly how I would do it is your first two picks, pick a wide receiver. If you're in a really good draft, around third round, you need to get your RB1, come back, get your wide receiver to fill out that position. Whatever your fifth pick is, you need it to be the best available player. Doesn't matter what it is, just best available player, whether that's running back,
Okay.
wide receiver most of the time. Also, you could go for a onesie position if that quarterback that you really like, that's going to make a difference. But you want to make sure your fifth and sixth round, I think, are the most important. If you're a fantasy football person, I think you could tell if a person's prepared based on their fifth, sixth, and seventh pick. That those three picks right there are the most important. So if I have a draft strategy right there, I think that your first four picks right there are like setting up the foundation of your team. It's really your fifth, sixth, and seventh round is like how prepared are you to build your team into like this guy. It kind of separates the boys from the men in terms of the league.
I
And then
agree. And to piggy,
afterwards,
yeah, I agree. That's nice.
and so that would be kind of my draft strategy right there. Another thing too, I kind of want to ask a question on is I kind of want to throw this back at you is stacks overrated or underrated?
I was gonna
Like, do
touch
you think
actually. I
that
was
like stacks? win championships or lose
I
championships
was gonna
more.
actually piggyback your statement into working this in, so perfect. So if anybody doesn't know, a stack is when you draft the quarterback and the wide receiver of that team, right? So Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, for example. Um, I think they win you championships. You just get the extra the bonuses. If those touchdowns are going to that guy, the extra stats they're both going to get, right? If so, a lot of people do bonus points where if it's a 40 or 50 plus yard touchdown, you get that. So now you know what I mean. You're just doubling down on that. So you'll get the extra little juice for sure. I like that better than it's like, oh, it's always terrible when you have like, all right, I have Joe Burrow, but I'm going against Jamar Chase this week. You're like, well, fuck, there goes Joe Burrow. You know,
For
whatever
sure.
happens there. So like stacks to me, it's huge. In almost every super flex league I drafted in, except one, I think I wasn't able to do it. I was able to stack both of my quarterbacks with some. It may not have been the wide receiver one on that team, but I was able to get a piece of the offense to stack. I think stacking is always good for sure.
I was gonna say, I think stacks. You're absolutely right. If the correct stat is a stack is there, for example, your Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase, I think that that's a league winner. But I'm gonna go against you on this one. I'm gonna go with more of the under on this one. I think some people go with stacks and it goes against them. So, for
You're
an
saying because
example,
they reach for the stack?
because they reach for the stack. I'll give you an example on some stacks that maybe not work out for you and it just may not like shake out for you. For example, like a Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. You are drafting a CeeDee Lamb very early on, and like Dak Prescott, like last year, maybe that's a different story, but Dak Prescott CeeDee Lamb stack sounds great on paper, but at what risk are you going to draft Dak Prescott? I know that he's a little bit later of a round guy, but I noticed that a lot of guys have good stacks, but they don't have enough pieces to get them over the hump. So I would say that also, I also think stacks hurt against people is because which teams are better later on in the season. I think certain stacks and certain quarterbacks are better in longer toward the end of the season, and like how much more are you willing to do that? So I'll give you an example. Like last year Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. In the beginning of the season, they were playing a lot better, and then toward the end of the season, with the injuries and things of that sort, like these things kind of trickle down. So I also think that the stack can go more against you rather than win it. But I would say that if you hit the stack, you are very likely to win a championship. But the stack is just so razor
That's
thin.
that's a good point. It's situational based because I'll double down on that. I had drafted Nico Collins and then drafted CJ Stroud. If I have Nico Collins by himself, I was much better off. If then would be having a different quarterback. I had Nico Collins. Like my receivers in this league are insane. I have Nico, I had Drake London, but then I stacked Drake London with Michael Penix. Hurt me, right? So if I wasn't so focused, so you're fair there. It's a double-edged sword because the idea of the stack is that it's beneficial, but you actually have to hit on it, right? So I had literally in the same team drafted Nico Collins, Drake London, and their stack, and it both of them bit me in the ass. CJ Stroud down year, Michael Penix, he's trying to figure it out. So
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
not always the best, but when it's a good strategy to have. And I think it's, just base it situational. Everything is situational. And like you said before, that's what I was trying to double down on is when you're saying, your fifth pick, best player available. If you like that thought, then use the tiers. That's where you use the tiers. All right, cool. It's my fifth round pick. I have three running backs and three wide receivers and one running back. Let me look at my tiers right now. All right, listen, there's a it's tier two RB for me right here. That's the clear cut answer, right? Or you gotta the tier one quarterback still there in the fifth round, which probably not likely, but or your just tiers are that bad. But you know what I mean? Like that's where you would use those tiers.
Yeah, for
What
sure.
other strategy we got? I mean, a lot of another strategy for me is when as much as the this. the foundation is early. What makes and breaks teams is the depth in the back end. And when you're getting your bench pieces or your flex pieces. So I tend to notice that if you don't grab a depth running back before a certain round, and then it's too late because the drop off is tremendous. So you can wait on running back and then you got to actually attack it before it's too late. So if you did what I do and having, four wide receivers and one running back after five, then that means at some point in the next few rounds, you're going to have to address one of the onesie positions and running back, which then you'll also have to calculate. Now I've stepped away from the wide receiver category. So there's a lot of mix, and it's kind of you got to really focus on how the board unfolds. But the back end, when it comes to running backs, if I already have my RB1 and 2 and they're pretty much a comfortable start every week, because there's sometimes you have a startable RB1 and then your RB2 is like a little shaky. But if you have a comfortable, I'm confident in both RB1 and 2 after you're drafted and now you're looking at RBs, I then look for who's fighting for a job. Who is now, that's why Katron Allen is a guy I'm looking for every time. But who's in a duo that I think can win the job.
Yeah.
Start off, maybe not, but win the job ultimately. So you're shooting for some upside as opposed to, all right, this guy's got the job right now, don't know for how long. I'm thinking about this guy doesn't have the job. I think he's going to take the job. That's why he's this where he is right now. So you're getting value. So that's another strategy for sure.
All right.
Upside. There's floor and ceiling.
Let's do it. All right, Anthony, what are some things that you want to avoid in your draft strategy going into the 2026 NFL season in terms of like
Here's
redrafts?
something that everybody should avoid, and we've all every fantasy player has learned. Avoid name chasing. Now, what
I
I mean
like
by
that.
that is chasing the name, right? Like, Odell, he signed with the Giants. So somebody's going to draft him, but it's a matter of when you're drafting him, right? So don't chase the name. Oh man, like DJ Moore. He's on the Bills now. The name is good. Don't go reaching. I'm not saying don't draft DJ Moore, but don't chase the name, the name hype. Every year, different player, different outcome. And so many times it's guys that you're drafting in the 3, 4, 5 rounds and the 6, 7, 8 rounds that are guys that have value of first, second, and third round.
Yeah. Anthony, I got a few to avoid. First of all, my first one is don't be inactive in your fantasy football league. Here's what I mean. If you send a trade and the first week or two and it doesn't go through, don't be one of those guys where like, all right, well, I'm now going to deny every single trade. Uh, get active early in the season, do low risk trades, get active, get a feel for the guys in your league. That would be my first thing. And then second
So
thing for the
ultimately, what he's saying is don't be a dingus.
Yeah, don't be a ding dong. All right.
Don't be a douche moose knuckle.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that stuff. Also, I'm gonna go with a guy like Anthony. This is my pre-warning to Anthony. Don't panic early. All right. Injuries happen in the first, second, third, and fourth week, and some guys like Anthony, they get in their jellies, they get in their fellies, and they get in their feelings and they do panic trades. All right.
What are you
For the
drinking, man?
most part, Anthony avoids that in some cases, but there are some times that guys just they get really in their jellies. They get a catastrophic injury to their team. Their first round pick gets hurt, and they panic and they end up trading some very strong value in their team to make up for that first round loss. Just chill. Just let football come to you. Throw out some trades. Don't panic. And don't get in your felly. feelings.
John, what are you referring to? What are you referring to?
I,
This sounds
I'm,
like something I this sounds like something I did, John. What are you referring to?
I'm just saying, Anthony. I think you take it as too personal.
What is, I mean, you actually literally said, Anthony, don't do this. What Anthony does, this is what Anthony does.
Well, I will say this. So
That's
I'll give you an
pretty
example.
personal to me,
For
John.
dynasties, he will trade away all first round picks for guys that he likes, and then in year three, now he's panicking. So just throwing it out there.
John, I need a example, please. The people want to know because I want to know. I want to know what you're saying that I did. I want to know if
So
it was really
all
bad.
I'm going to say is this: for guys that are in injuries, all right. So for example, me, I'll throw myself on Front Street because I'm the inactive guy. All right. So I had injuries in 2024, and I didn't want to trade, and it hurt me. I ended up being like I think second to last in the league. So don't be inactive. But there are times where you trade away too much too early, and then you're sitting there and you're like, man, I could have had this guy. I could have had that guy. And there are times where you traded away good players. I believe there was two times in a year where you were in the playoffs, and because you traded away guys really early in the season, that same guy that you traded away too early ended up biting you in the ass. And I believe it was a wide receiver or running back.
Was
And
it
it
Eddie
happened to you.
Mack?
Yeah, I think it was Eddie Mack. Yep.
Fucking Eddie Mack.
Yeah. And I don't remember who the player is. We will fact check that in the next episode. We will actually do a little homework on that. But there were times, and that is my warning for you guys. And that is what I will say is that don't trade away your guys too early, because later on that guy might bite you in the ass. And I think it happened to you actually back-to-back years against Eddie Mack.
I can see it because I have an itch, John. I have an
Yeah,
itch.
yeah, you definitely have an itch. So, Anthony, what's your response to like inactivity or being overly like what's the fine balance in that?
I hate inactivity, John. I like the biggest pet peeve, I mean, for people who really are active and enjoy it, is when it comes to trading, right? We all have, you can't be, it's like a tough area to cross because it's like how you feel about certain things. Somebody feels differently, right? And that's life. But like, it pisses me off, A, if like you send a trade and they just don't respond, or A, they just reject it. And like I've rejected a trade and not said anything. That's fine. I responded. I've like that's okay. Some people would get iffy on that. That's fine. If a dude sent me five trades, I rejected all five. I still didn't. I rejected all five. I was active. Ask me something. I'm not the one looking, right? So don't get mad if I just didn't reply back or counter offer. Just what are you looking to do? Let's start a conversation, right? Instead of just clicking buttons back and forth. But be active. Like if you don't want to trade, then say that, and then that ends the that makes everything better. It takes 2 seconds, right? Everybody is busy, but everybody has time to literally respond. Like there's no excuse, right? If you
Exactly.
leave, especially if I trade and I'm trying to figure out my week, and I sent a trade to you on Monday, and it's now Wednesday, and you've not even read it. We got Thursday night football coming, my guy.
Let's
I
do
got
it.
things to
Yeah.
do, people to see, moves to make.
Yeah.
So
You're right.
that is a huge thing to me. How you value things and trades, whatever, another story. But yeah, don't be an inactive douche monkey. Respond, say, hey, I don't want to trade. No, I'm not looking to sell this guy. And that's it.
All right. Anthony, to kind of wrap this up, any advice for commissioners going into the 2026, going into being a commissioner, maybe a guy's just starting his league. What's some advice that you could give to a
Well,
first-time commissioner?
this is a beautiful thing because technically this year I'll be a first time commissioner after all these years of fantasy football and just playing. I'm finally starting one of my own. Wish I had music. Yeah, I'm sure a commissioner, any job of running something is annoying. Just be as communicating as possible. I mean, like I've had the league open for months now, and like I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. Hey, like this, I want to run the league the way I want to, but also I'm inviting people to spend money, right? So I wanted to try median scoring, for example. So I made it up to a vote. I explained to everybody what it is. I said, hey, do some research. I'm about to do a vote here. I'm going to put it up for a week. Because how many times have you had the second highest score of the week in going up against the highest scoring point girl? You know what I mean? So like this median scoring is, for the people who don't know, is every week it takes everybody's score, creates a league minimum, league median. And if you score, if the league median for this week is 125 and me and John face each other and he beats me 160 to 158, my gee, you know what I mean? He gets a win, I get a loss, but because I scored over the league median, I get a win, he gets a win. So if you score under it, if you lose, you get two L's, and that's how you could then, it's basically double record, but it now makes it more competitive, still more fun. The good teams are where they should be, right? So that's definitely something that I want to do is you want to make it as fun as possible, have people be active, try different things, but be fair about it. I believe like a standard league is -1 point for an interception. I'm always -2. I think that's pretty standard. Giving points for a 40-yard and a 50-yard touchdown. So just be transparent, put things up to voting, be fair. It's a little annoying to do it, but if you put the little extra work and you know bullshit acceptance and getting everybody's money is probably always going to be the number one annoying thing a commissioner has. But if you could just be transparent, understanding, and try to make it as fun as possible, then fantasy is fun itself, and your league will be awesome. It'll be a league that they talk about in years to come, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's what we're looking forward to. Just to kind of wrap up for my commissioner advice for anybody that's first time or maybe you are a commissioner is I definitely think putting up things to vote. Number two, having a backup guy, a guy that's like reliable to just to throw it out there, be like, hey, I'm interested in your league. Great, awesome, join. This is how much it costs, whatever the case may be. And I think it is important to have transparency. And also, I think the number one thing which could you could tell based on a commissioner is do these guys come back? And are they enjoying themselves? And I think that's the most important thing is like, what are we doing this for? Is to have fun. So I think if you're not having fun doing it, don't be a commissioner. And if you feel like it's not fun anymore for you, you should step down as a commissioner, maybe join another league that's a little bit more established. So that would be my advice is if you're going to go into there being a commissioner, try to get guys that are active, know football. Even if you want to start off with a guy that doesn't really know much, at least try to explain it to them as best as possible. And just have guys that are fun, man, that just want to have fun, love football, and are active. So that would be my advice for any, new commissioner or any current commissioner that's been running for a while. So, all right, guys. So that wraps up our huddle for today. And we will see you next time in the next huddle break.